Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is going to be my May half wrap up. I think I have 11 books to talk about, so let's jump right in. Let's start with the one I read most recently and want to talk about a little bit extra. That's Little Thieves. This one I had heard a fair amount of good things about. I don't think I heard anything negative about it, and a few people who I have fairly similar taste to really liked it. Oh, by the way, I'm going to talk about the Spoonies readathon at the end of this video. This is about a sort of con artist who is the goddaughter of Death and Fortune, two gods in this world. She was given away to them by her mother because she was the 13th child of a 13th child, and so it was assumed she would be unlucky. Also, probably just because she was a 13th mouth to feed, that's kind of a lot, and her family was poor. So she was raised by Death and Fortune and felt kind of like they loved her, and then when she was 13 they told her she had to get a job. They told her she had to basically apprentice with one of them, and she didn't only not want to choose between them, she didn't want to, it made her feel unloved, and like the only reason they were taking care of her or showed any affection was because they wanted her to serve them. So in order to get out of this, she has been scheming and working to raise a lot of money so she can go to another country where there are different gods, so she won't be under the purview of Death and Fortune anymore and they can't make her serve them. But then she angers another low god by stealing from one of the people who kind of belonged to this low god and who paid homage to this low god and who had been given a trinket by this god to kind of protect them, and she sold the trinket along with a bunch of other jewels and things. So this low god cursed her to slowly turn into gems unless she was able to break the curse, but she isn't told how to break the curse. She has to kind of figure it out for herself or do it accidentally. And I think some of the words are that she has to make up for what she's taken, and so that is the setting out premise of the book. There is a side romance in this book that I thought was really sweet and cute. Part of it annoyed me. I'm going to talk about that in the spoilery discussion section. And I also really liked a few of the side characters, and the magic system was fun as well. Oh, I really like the cover because it does a really good job of representing what's going on in the book. It has our main character in the middle, and it has like some pearls around her neck that are important to the story, and then it has who you can see as Death and Fortune behind her, and they have like little things that show which one is which, and then you have someone who's very well described in the book, matches how it's portrayed on the cover, the god who gives her this curse. So I really like the way the cover shows all these things that are important to the story. Oh, and the sequel is coming out, or like has just come out, so I'm like happy that I read this right when the sequel is coming out so I can go ahead and read that one. Spoilery discussion section. I will put a time code either on the screen or as the first line in the description of where you can skip to if you don't want to see spoilers for this book. The big one that I want to talk about is the deal, or the curse. I feel like, I don't think this is badly done at all. I like how it was done. I feel like the god who cursed her was unfair and vindictive, and I don't think she had done much of anything wrong. She was stealing from people who had plenty of money, and I'm a person who's like, if it's stolen money, you can re-steal it and it's not bad. And the only way that nobles get money from peasants is by stealing it, because taxation without representation is theft. So that's my opinion on her actions. Again, she stole the identity of Giselle, who had treated her pretty badly, who was a noble, and basically reduced her to the same status that she herself had as just a commoner. And it was worse for her because she had to figure out how to stay afloat after being totally privileged all her life and not having to make money and not knowing to trade, but she did fine, and our main character checked up on her to make sure she did fine. And in the moment when she stole it, Giselle was totally going to have her have to do all the nasty parts of being married to this horrible person. And yeah, I don't think she did anything wrong. So the low god being so nasty as to sentence her to death, basically, unless she risked her life for other people or gave up her life for other people, makes more sense when you bring in the final reveal that the low god probably did that not to punish our main character, whose name I can't remember. I think it's in first person, and I always forget the names of people when it's in first person. I think it's Favna. The god did the curse more to manipulate Favna into taking down this bad guy as a way to end the curse, because this bad guy was cutting down the god's forests. So I really liked how that tied up and made the vindictiveness make sense. So yeah, I thought that was really well done. It's kind of fun when something is like not making sense for most of the book, but with the final reveal it makes sense. Okay, about the love interest. I was frustrated but also impressed when he turned the tables on our protagonist and dropped his bumbling, embarrassed persona and like showed her that he knew, because he's the investigator who's investigating the crime she's been doing. He knew exactly who she was and what she'd been doing, and even like had deduced from the way she did her crimes and the calling card she left that she was a basically all of her background and her problems with the upper class and how she was deprived as a child. And yeah, I found that really funny, and I really liked how they grew together and started solving mysteries together. That was all really fun. The part that annoyed me was at one point his mentor ends up murdered with a red penny down his throat, which is her calling card. And he had pointed out she knew that he knew what her calling card was. So why would she, after she knew that he knew that, murder someone close to him with her calling card? It doesn't make any sense. And if he had paused to think 2 thoughts in a row beyond, it's her calling card, she must have done it, wait a second, that doesn't make sense, she's not that stupid, it would have, like, not caused this rift between them where he was accusing her and chasing her and saying all sorts of awful things to her. And I just think that while she's denying it, he should have put those 2 thoughts together, and even though this other person was really important to him and he was in an emotional state, his first thought of she's responsible is understandable, but his second thought should have been, that doesn't make sense. Like, I don't think he should have inherently trusted her, because they aren't at that point. They don't know each other that well, but I think that their working relationship and their emotional relationship should have been important enough to him at that point to follow through on the thinking process without what eventually happened, which is her magical companion, who they all trust, basically vouching for her and saying and being her alibi. And he should be sorry, which he was sufficiently sorry and did a sufficient amount of groveling that I forgave him. So I liked how that was handled. It was just frustrating in that moment. And yeah, she has trauma around not being believed when she's accused of something, and I also have that trauma. So yeah, I related heavily to her in that area, and it was like, that was a really terrible thing that you just did there, Mr. Love Interest. Although I don't think he knew that she was traumatized in that area. But yeah, those are the discussion points that I wanted to talk about. Ultimately, I really loved the book, so I'm really excited for the sequel. 5 stars. A lot of these I listen to on audiobook, which I'm counting for one of the prompts of the Spoonies Readathon, which is just to read an easy format, which sometimes I'm really not in the mood for an audiobook, but lately I have been because I've got a new video game and I listen to audiobooks while I play my video games. This one's Fire Emblem Engage. It's the most recent Fire Emblem one, and the new Zelda game is coming out. I think it has come out, but it's currently being shipped to me as I film this. I'm really excited about it, and we'll be listening to a lot of audiobooks while I play that as well. So next is I listened to Moon of the Crusted Snow. I think I most recently saw this recommended by Sim over on TikTok, and it is a somewhat post-apocalyptic. We're not really sure what's going on in the rest of the world, but we know that power is out and no one's fixing it for weeks and weeks, and like the internet is out, and like all technology is has no power and is not working, and like phones, there's no phone service either. And it's set in a reservation, I think in Canada, an Anishinaabe reservation, and it's basically about them surviving without power and such, and with being totally cut off from communication with the various members who are like off at school in other cities or things like that. And it gets a bit creepy. It's about the logistics of making sure that the food cache they have is distributed as it should be, and that they have enough for everybody, and making sure people are keeping their lights off as much as possible, because they have a generator but they don't necessarily have enough fuel to last until summer. And I just really like all those like survival type stuff, so I was like very into it. It kind of reminded me of zombie apocalypse stories. I've always really liked those stories, and I really liked the way that this one was done, and I thought the final climax was handled in a way I really liked as well. And that's another one that there's going to be a sequel to. I don't think it's come out yet. Sim actually talked about it when BNN was doing their pre-order sale, because the next book is available for pre-order now. And I gave Moon of the Crusted Snow 5 stars. We have a couple that were in my try chapter challenge that I ended up DNFing anyway. Even though they passed muster at the first chapter, they did not pass muster in the first 100 pages. The Final Strife, unfortunately. I was really looking forward to the Final Strife, and was hopeful for Bloodmarked, but they both kind of have the same problem. They're both over 500 pages, and they both have this problem of not getting started very quickly and having very frustrating things happen in the first 100 pages. So basically it would alternate between something frustrating would happen and then something boring would go on for an inordinate number of pages, and then it would be frustrating and then boring. Then one that did go well from that video was Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor. I love this. It is about a young boy who I think was born in China and then moved with his mom to America when his dad was executed by the state for standing up for Muslims. And so he and his mom are Muslims. And so his mom has taught him about Islam and a little bit about Chinese culture, but he has not grown up with a lot of the history stories that a lot of Chinese children grow up with and just know. So that becomes important, because he plays this game kind of like Pokemon Go. You wear a visor over your eyes and then you can see video game creatures through it. So one day he meets another kid at school who also plays this game and is also Chinese, and a class bully who also plays the game tries to get this new kid to give him one of his like powerful creatures in the game, and is taken over by an evil spirit of greed. And when he attacks, I think it starts with our character hearing the voice of the first emperor of China, and then he's not able to manifest the powers of the first emperor to fight off this greed demon, because he doesn't know the history and the stories of this emperor. So the other kid, Simon, I think, sends him a link to a Wikipedia article that he reads, and that gives him the powers, because the legendary figures, such as this emperor who's trying to help him fight the demon, get their powers from the stories and the culture of who they are. So like, he is legendarily associated with dragons and water powers, so he can control water, even though in life he couldn't do that. But because people associate him with water powers, if the person he's trying to work with invokes that story and knows the story about the water powers, he can invoke the story and use the water powers. It's a bit of a confusing idea, but it makes sense when you read the book. And that's basically the premise for the whole book. So when you come up against legendary characters who are trying to fight you, you want to know their legends so that you know what kind of powers they're gonna have, so that you know how to fight them, and you have to know stories about the person who's helping you fight so that you can put together a strategy and use their powers to counteract the other legendary person's powers. So, because of that, there's a fair amount of info dumping about the history of China and about each character as they come up, that explains what powers they have. So, fortunately, this author is very good at info dumping in a very interesting way. If you watched their YouTube videos or TikTok videos, I really love the way they explain things from Chinese history. They're very humorous and just make it very interesting. So I didn't mind the info dumps. I found them fascinating, and it makes sense in the story of why these info dumps are necessary to the main character, because he needs them to be able to use magical powers. And yeah, I really loved all of the history that was in this, the cool powers, the legends that give powers, and like the idea that storytelling and knowledge of stories gives powers is very cool to me. So yeah, I gave Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor 5 stars. Then The Wicked Bargain by Gabe Cole-Novoa. I heard about this during the Trans Rights Readathon. So I put in a hold on my library and it finally came. This one took me a while to get into and to care about the characters, but when I did, I really did. Our main character's dad made a deal with El Diablo, which there isn't only one Diablo, there's like multiple of them, but with a Diablo, to save our main character, who is called Mar. Mar was sickly as a child and was going to die, but their father made a deal for their life, and also to make the crew basically unable to be killed by people. They could like drown or die of old age, but not be killed by people, which is very useful for a pirate crew. So they were very successful for quite a while until El Diablo took his payment, which was the soul of the dad. And when El Diablo takes his soul, he also destroys the ship and kills everyone aboard. Except Mar survives. And we're not sure why, but like something magical's going on in that area. And Mar has fire and ice powers, not water powers, ice. And they have been suppressing their powers and only using them when other people couldn't see, because a few times they used it and people saw them and they freaked out and like tried to kill them because they called them a demonial. They get picked up by another pirate crew, swept out of the ocean when they are adrift because their ship has been destroyed. And on there we find our love interest, who is quite annoying at the beginning of the story, but also pretty cute. This story emphasizes a lot of the gayness that was going on pirate ships, so I really appreciate that, because a lot of pirate stories have been straight washed, whereas when you look at the history, a lot of queer people found refuge on pirate ships and the freedom to live their lives openly on pirate ships, so that was very cool. So I gave The Wicked Bargain 4 stars. Then we have Real Men Knit by Kwana Jackson. This one, I was sitting around wanting an audiobook because I was in a crocheting mood. I was also dog sitting, so I would just sit in with the dog, and she'd go have a nap, and I would crochet for hours while listening to an audiobook. So I found Real Men Knit in the Black Joy section of my library's audiobook catalog, and like obviously I'm into the fire arts, so it was fun to crochet while listening to this story, which is a romance about, it's the start of a series, so it's about 4 brothers who were adopted by a black mother who has passed away. They are deciding, they're all adults, and they're all deciding whether they can take time out of their already established lives to run her yarn shop. And her yarn shop wasn't just a yarn shop, it was kind of a community center. She met with a bunch of old people at least weekly, and they all knitted together and like talked, formed community with each other, and then several of them would donate whatever they made to children's drives and things. And it was also a place where they had little classes for kids who wanted to learn to knit. So those are a lot of the reasons that our main character for this book fights with his brothers some of the time to keep the yarn shop going instead of just selling it. And so it's kind of about updating and figuring out what they need to do to the shop to make it ready to reopen and make it fresh, so that they will bring in new customers, because their mom really didn't have enough customers to keep it going. It was kind of failing, and so if they want to keep it going, they need to do something new. And so it's somewhat about that, and it's also about him falling in love with this woman who has been working in the yarn shop for a long time and who kind of grew up with them, and this was her second home because her home life wasn't that great. So they've known each other forever, and that's like one of the romance tropes that I enjoy, and their falling in love is really sweet. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of the series. I think one more book is out, and then we're waiting on the next 2 books. Then, because I was in an audiobook mood and playing my video game, I actually also listened to The World We Make via audiobook, and it was really good. The magic system, or the sci-fi system of this book, is kind of hard to make sense of, but you don't really mind because it's a lot about the characters and the ideas. And like there's manifestation where you make an idea into magic, so that's kind of part of it. And there's also sort of world hopping where you can travel along these manifestations, but you can also go to like other realities. So it is kind of confusing, but I really liked it. I don't know a lot about New York, but I like kind of seeing it through other people's eyes who really love it. And yeah, I especially love Bronca and Brooklyn. Yeah, basically the characters are really great, and I really liked that we got to further explore them a lot in this book. Then, How to Be Ace. I feel like the next 3 books are all ones that I got because of Kara of Wild Book Garden's favorite graphic novels and picture books and comics video, so I'll link that below. How to Be Ace, a memoir of growing up asexual. It does get one thing slightly incorrect. It says somewhere in here that aromanticism is a subcategory of asexuality, but it's actually a separate thing. But that's the only thing that I could see that it got slightly incorrect. So there's a lot in this graphic novel about battling those normativities and basically feeling broken until you figure out who you are or find other people who have similar experiences. Or how it also really helps to see representation in media, such as a lot of people ship these two as a romantic asexual pairing. Crowley and Aziraphale from Good Omens. So, The World We Make, 5 stars. How to Be Ace, 5 stars. A lot of 5 stars this month so far, which is really great. Then we have Love in the Library, which was written by Maggie Takuta Hall, and this is the book that Scholastic, who I think are the main people who distribute kids' books in schools, asked the author to remove mentions of racism in her author's note. Anyway, that was horrible. She refused to do it, and I'll see if I can find, she wrote a post about how she didn't think that they are going to change their ways, so I'll try to find that and link that below. But basically this is about grandparents, I think, not parents, falling in love in a Japanese internment camp, and how it was totally unfair and horrible and racist that they were put into these camps, and how they were able to find love despite that, and also how books are awesome. It is very tonally gray and brown, which I think describes the environment that they were put into and the sort of overcast feeling of it all. And it shows like guards in towers and things like that, and these fences. And yeah, I think it's really good for kids to know about that, and I think this does a really good job of explaining it in a kid appropriate way. So it's a really good book, 5 stars. And book censorship is bad, and book banning is bad. Then we have Berry Song by Michaela Goad and illustrated by the author. This author has illustrated other books that she wasn't the author of, such as Encounter and I Sang You Down from the Stars, which now I want to read those as well. But this is about berry picking and indigenous names for the berries, and how they sing songs to the berries, and how a grandmother passes down her knowledge of the berries to her granddaughter. I love berries. I love foraging. It also talks about other types of foraging, such as pulling hemlock branches out of the ocean and getting the eggs off of them, the herring eggs, and getting seaweed, and getting salmon. And there's a fair amount of repeating names of berries. Take care of the land as the land takes care of us. It's just really sweet and wonderful, and I love it. 5 stars. Okay, now for this morning's readathon, I read Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice, which is written by a disabled author for the first prompt. It's also nonfiction, which is one of the later prompts, and it is about disability justice, which I have only known a few things about. I've seen it mentioned a lot, and I've seen posts about what the core tenets are, which I will link below, something that says what those are, an article or something. And it's a lot about mutual aid and care systems. Yeah, it's really hard to sum up. I just kind of highly recommend it for anyone who wants to know more about disability justice. Yeah, it was just really good. 5 stars. So I did number 1, author with a disability, 3, easy format in, I read a lot of audiobooks, nonfiction, that one counts as nonfiction, but I'm also going to read You're the Tiger, which is a collection of essays by a disabled author later in the month. For self-care, I've been crocheting a lot, which really makes me happy and fills my creative juices, but also I've been video gaming, which doesn't produce anything, isn't considered by a lot of people accomplishing something, but it makes me feel happy. I really enjoy it, and it is actually another way to consume a story, because I tend to play story video games, which Fire Emblem falls under. So yeah, I really enjoy all those aspects. I still need to read a book with a disability I relate to or want to learn more about. I have a few autistic books coming up that I'm going to read in the rest of the month. A comfort read. Actually, yeah, I read some of the J.D. Robb novels this month, so those are comfort reads for me. I need to research a disability and find a classic with disability rep. And then I also need to recommend a booktuber or creator or books with disability rep. I will link below some of my videos with where I talked a lot about autistic books. The creator I want to talk about is Kiera the Scrivener. She talks about disability a fair amount. She recently talked a lot about the Women's Prize for Fiction and does a lot of individual reviews and just has a very soothing voice. And I really, even though I don't necessarily want to read the books that she talks about, I really like listening to her discuss them, and like all the stuff she has to say is really interesting. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know how your May is going so far. I'd like to leave an emoji. How about a flower, because it is May and lots of flowers are blooming. Bye!